Hey everybody, welcome to the video. It's Saturday, May 15th, and we're breaking down this 10-game main slate that we have over on DraftKings today. And yes, I'm back. I'm alive. I am posting MLB videos once again. I realized I took some time off, but it was kind of a busy week or so for me. I graduated from school, then right after that, I went down to Florida. More of a vacation kind of thing. Was also looking at apartments to live in because I am looking to move there sometime this summer. So me and my girlfriend went down there and was looking at some places. So I figured I'd just take a week or so off, kind of rest up a bit, recharge, and I'll be back. And we are finally back, and I think it was a pretty good slate today. It's not a split slate. We just have one main slate today. I realize there's 3 games early on, but I don't like those small slates. So I'm looking forward to today. Glad to be back, and hopefully you guys are glad as well. So if you guys find this video helpful in any way possible, please leave a like. And if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out, and I really do appreciate it. You can follow me over on social media. The handle's in the bottom right corner of your screen. And if you want help support the channel over on Patreon and get access to some extra content and tools, link is down below for that. If you do want to join the community, we have several hundred people over there, but you get projections, the optimizer, ownership projections, rankings, cheat sheets, data sheets, all that fun stuff. You can join the Discord community as well and ask questions throughout the day, or just come in, hang out during the games. Link is down below for that, but I think that's it for the plug. So without further ado, let's dive into today's video. As per usual, we will start with the pitchers and move on to the bats. And up top, we have the ace of the slate, Trevor Bauer, $11,000. Carlos Rodon's another fine play. I don't have him listed on here, but he's also viable as well. Aaron Nolan, I love in the matchup or the park for him, so I left him off as well. But there is other aces on the slate, but my favorite one as of right now is Trevor Bauer, even though he does come in with a massive price point. But I do like the matchup here versus Miami at home. There's no Vegas numbers out yet, but I'm going to assume that Miami's probably going to come in with like a low 3 here, maybe a 3-2, 3-1. Not sure if we'll see it in the 2s, but either way, it should be a very positive thing for Trevor Bauer whenever that number does come out. 8K prop in Vegas as well. He should be a heavy favorite. And looking at his numbers since last season, there's really nothing to dispute Trevor Bauer's greatness. Averaging around 104 pitches per game, a 2 ERA, 3.25 xFIP, 2.9 SIERA, 35.5% K rate with 12.2 Ks per 9, and just overall elite numbers for the most part. Doesn't give up hard contact. And if you're looking at the matchup as a righty versus the Marlins, they're striking out at a 26% clip, 7% walk rate, only a 131 ISO. The on-base percentage isn't too bad, and the WOBA is not bad either. An 89 WRC plus I wouldn't say is absolutely terrible, but it's still a good matchup here for Trevor Bauer. And if you have the money for him, I feel really confident having him in my lineups tonight. The problem is there is a lot of good bats in this slate. We have Coors Field, we have that Toronto game, and that stadium that they're playing in is always going to be great for hitting, and there's just lots of good offenses. Yankees, Astros are all viable, so I'm not sure if you're going to be able to get all the way up to Trevor Bauer, but if you do have the money for him, I do think he's an excellent play, obviously. Ian Anderson, you get an $1,800 discount here. Now, it's because he's obviously not quite up to Trevor Bauer's skill level, but there is some strikeout upside in this matchup because dating back to last season, Ian Anderson's sitting at around a 28% K rate, and this Milwaukee lineup will strike out quite a bit versus righties. Outside of a couple good players in this roster, the Milwaukee Brewers are just not that great of a team, and so far this season, they're striking out nearly at 27% of the time versus righties. The WRC plus is low, on base percentage below 300, WOBA at 282. So pretty good matchup here for Ian Anderson. I know it can be maybe more of a wild card, but I do like the upside here, and I think the price tag is fine, especially if you can't get all the way up to Trevor Bauer. Domingo Germán, $7,900. He's not someone I really like to play too often just because I have a hard time trusting the guy. I should also mention Ian Anderson. The implied team total against him is only 3.66, slight favorite, and 6.5 Ks as well, so I just want to throw that out there. But Domingo Germán, kind of a tough guy to trust for me, but I do think he can pick up the win here. Don't like the park that he's pitching in. Camden Yards is definitely a good park for bats, but with Jorge Lopez on the mound for the Orioles, I would imagine the Yankees should be able to tee off here and get him a win. And last time Germán played against the Orioles, he had a fantastic game, nearly 30 fantasy points, and there's some strikeout upside for him. Not a huge strikeout guy, but dating back to last season, right around 24% clip, which isn't terrible for a guy at $7,900. Again, not my favorite play in the world, but he is viable if you're looking for a pitcher that should be in line for the win as long as he can go those 5+ innings, which I don't think he should have too tough of a time doing. That doesn't really walk guys as well, and I always like pitchers that don't walk a lot of guys. And looking at the matchup here specifically as a righty versus the Orioles, they're not striking out a ton, only 23.7% of the time. I mean, they're striking out some, but not a ton. 81 WRC plus, 282 on base percentage, 280 WOBA, 8.1% walk rate, I should say, and a 141 ISO. So it's a fine matchup for Germán, so I think he's viable. But Tristan McKenzie, 7,300 bucks. I'd imagine he's going to be a little popular today just because of that matchup versus Seattle. I think people always like using pitchers versus Seattle, which I totally understand because that lineup outside of a couple guys is definitely beatable. And dating back to last season, Tristan McKenzie does have a pretty solid K rate. I know he got blown out versus the White Sox a few games ago, but for Tristan McKenzie, it was more than a few games ago for the Indians. But he does have a 32.6% K rate. Now the other numbers are a bit iffy. That walk rate's pretty high at above 13%. The ERA is pretty close to 4, which isn't terrible for a guy at 7,300, but the xFIP's above 4. Sierra at 3.96 isn't awful, but some of the underlying numbers are a little scary, especially that walk rate. But I still think he's a fine option here. Doesn't get a lot of ground balls again. Some of the numbers aren't fantastic for Tristan McKenzie. Over a 50% fly out ball rate, but he's still a young pitcher and he's got some upside in his arm. And Seattle's a team that you can definitely pick on a little bit. Versus righties so far this season, 25% K rate, 8% walk rate, 166 ISO, 299 base percentage. I realize some of these numbers are showing up red, but they're still not that great. They're worse versus lefties. I'd prefer if it was a lefty versus Seattle, but you can still use righties against them. And I think there's some upside here for Tristan McKenzie. He's just one of those ways where you could get some extra money to save up for some expensive bats in your lineups today because there's a lot of good expensive bats. So that being said, I think that's going to be it for the pitching, and we can move right on to the bats. And as per usual, we'll start with the catcher position, move around the diamond, and hit the outfield as well. And up top, we have a Reds catcher, Tucker Barnhart here, 4,700 bucks, going up against Jules Chastain in Coors Field. So obviously, we're going to like all the Reds here quite a bit. Coors Field's a hitter's paradise. Now, actually, the Reds do play in one of the better hitter paradises in all of baseball in Great American Small Park, but it's still a park upgrade going to Coors Field. So you can definitely sign me up for all these guys. You can use the righties, you can use the lefties versus Chastain. Just not really a great pitcher for the most part, or Chastain, I should say. I'm thinking of a NASCAR driver, Chastain. I keep wanting to say that, so hopefully I don't keep doing that throughout this video. But I feel like all the Reds here quite a bit. If you're looking at his splits versus either righties or lefties, dating back to last season, he's got a 6.23 ERA, 6.1 xFIP, 5.82 Sierra, only a 12% K rate and a 12.3% walk rate. So the exact same K rate and walk rate, which is never a good thing, especially when your K rate's only 12.3%. So yeah, I like all of the Reds here quite a bit, giving up a 270 ISO. Not a ton of hard contact, but 2.1 home runs per 9 innings, and you can use pretty much the entire Reds roster here. So you can sign me up for them. And then dropping down to JT Realmuto, 4,600 bucks, going up against Anthony K. So the Reds and the Phillies are looking like some of the best offenses to use on this slate. The Washington Nationals are right up there with them, but I mean, Anthony K, you get a lefty on the mound who's just not been pitching very good so far this season. I know it's a small sample size, but you can definitely use all the Phillies here for the most part. They're playing in Toronto, which they're not playing in Toronto, but they're playing in their home ballpark that they're using right now, which is in Dunedin, Florida, whatever it's called. But it's definitely a hitter's paradise, very small park. Looks like a middle school stadium if you look at it. So you can use all the bats here on the Phillies. Don't love Toronto today because they're going up against Aaron Nola. So even though it is a hitter's paradise, not really big on Toronto today, but I can definitely get on using some Phillies here. And JT Realmuto always had some good splits versus left-handed pitching. So far this season, he's batting .302, and 127 plate appearance sample size with a WRC plus close to 115 ISO, just shy of 200. So definitely like Realmuto here versus lefty and Anthony K, and whoever else they throw out there after they probably beat him up early on. And then Dalton Varsho, only 2,800 bucks, also eligible in the outfield as well. But going up against Joe Ross, who sometimes can look like a decent pitcher, but for the most part, the guy's pretty average at best. And I think you can use the Arizona Diamondbacks here as a maybe more of a contrarian stack, because I think most people will be on the Washington Nationals today. So maybe pivoting to the Diamondbacks, who are also in a pretty good spot. And the Washington Nationals bullpen isn't that great either. I do think they make for a pretty solid stack today, so I don't hate Varsho, even though his numbers in 30 plate appearances this season have not been very impressive whatsoever. Going to our first base, we have Rhys Hoskins, 4,700 bucks. Gonna sound like a broken record here with Reds bats, Phillies bats, and Nationals bats for the most part today, but they're all my pretty much favorite offenses. You could throw the Yankees in there as well, and even the Astros are pretty good plays, but for the most part, most of these guys are centered around those few teams. So I do like Rhys Hoskins here. He's always had good power versus left-handed pitching, and again, very good park for hitting. Josh Bell, 3,500 bucks. The Nationals went absolutely off last night. I think when I went to bed, they had 17 runs. I don't know if they scored anything after that, but either way, they were absolutely crushing the slate. And it looks like Luke Weaver got moved back to Sunday, so Seth Frankoff is going to get the start today, so I think we can definitely pick on him a little bit. Also, don't mind hitting in Arizona as well. Only 3,500 bucks, and always hitting lower in the order these days, but I don't think Josh Bell is a bad play here. I do prefer him versus right-handed pitching, so definitely think we can use some Josh Bell here and pretty much all the Nationals for the most part today. Then Connor Joe, 2,500 bucks. He's been a guy I've been playing the past few days, and He's been producing for me at a near min price tag, and 2,500 bucks now. He's still really cheap. I prefer lefties versus Malley, and I actually like using Malley most days. And you could actually use Malley today. Wouldn't hate that in tournaments just because the Rockies lineup's not very good. Malley is a guy that should have some success here. He always has had some strikeout upside around a 30% K rate, but again, course field, so I am going to prefer the bats here. And if you're looking for a dirt cheap option at first base, Connor Joe is not a bad option to me. Only 28 plate appearance sample size so far, but he is batting .316 with a WOBA above 420 and on-base percentage above .530. Obviously, those numbers will probably come down, but he has been doing well so far this season in a small sample size. And then going to second base, Gene Segura, 4,700 bucks. He's shown he's had the ability to hit lefties the past couple of seasons, and this season he's batting over 300. So I think Gene Segura is fine if you are stacking up the Phillies. Just wish he was a little bit cheaper, but I still think he's fine nonetheless. Nick Senzel, 4,400 bucks, should be leading off here for the Cincinnati Reds. Even if he's not, he's somewhere else in the order. I still think he's fine, just because I think you can use all the Reds here versus Chastain. Just not a very good pitcher for the most part. They do have a team total approaching 6. I would not be surprised if that surpasses 6 as the day goes on. So I obviously like Senzel, especially if he's leading off for pretty much the best offense in the entire slate. Then Josh Van Meter, 2,500 bucks. He's kind of part of that, maybe more so Contrarian Arizona Diamondback stack that I don't think is terrible today. You could also throw in Pavin Smith, Eduardo Escobar, and some other guys on here that I do not have, but I do like them as a contrarian stack. I think they could kind of pop off a little bit versus Joe Ross at what should be lower ownership compared to other offenses tonight. Going to third base, Eugenio Suarez, 5,800 bucks. Also eligible at the shortstop position as well, but pretty much just living up on the Reds here. Wish he was hitting higher in the order, but still pretty much like every single Reds bat on the roster today for the most part. Whoever makes the lineup, I will have interest in them. Mike Moustakas, 5,200 bucks. Imagine he'll be pretty popular. Should be betting cleanup here versus a righty on the mound in Coors Field. Only 5,200 bucks compared to some of the other Reds. That's not terrible because Castellanos is expensive, Suarez is expensive, Jesse Winker is pretty expensive. So 5,200 bucks is not terrible, even though I know that's not cheap. But you know he's always had some decent pop versus right-handed pitching. Then Alec Bohm, 3,200 bucks. If you just want cheap exposure to the Phillies, you get a nice righty on lefty matchup here versus Anthony Kay. So I think he makes a lot of sense. Could see him being pretty popular because at third base, you could also use Moustakas at first base. And you could also use Suarez at shortstop if you happen to go that route. So I think Alec Bohm should be pretty popular today for the most part. And then going to shortstop, we have Trey Turner, 5,900 bucks. Trey Turner's been awesome this season. In 148 plate appearances, he has a 312 batting average, 387 WOBA, 239 ISO, 143 WRC plus with a 551 slugging. Also, he's got elite speed, so anytime he gets on base, there's always that stolen base upside as well, which can boost his floor and ceiling. So love Trey Turner in national stacks. And I do think that implied team total could get above 5 as the day progresses. Corey Seager, 5,600 bucks. There is no team total out yet for the Dodgers, but I don't think Jordan Holloway is anyone I'm going to be scared of, especially from this Dodgers offense. So I think Corey Seager is a fine option, probably more of a contrarian option, just because I could see people going with Reds guys, Nationals, and even have Gio Urshela here, who I haven't really mentioned any Yankees yet, but I only like to list like 3 guys per position, so they're kind of like the odd guys off there. But I still think all the Yankees are in play today. Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton, LeMahieu, Urshela, and Gleyber Torres are all viable options today, even though I do not have them listed. But Urshela's batting nearly 300 this season. And Jorge Lopez, while he has had some decent games so far this season, still think he's viable because Jorge Lopez is a guy that you can definitely beat up on, especially if he's off that day. Plus, Camden Yards is definitely a hitter's paradise, and they're on the road, so you get those guaranteed ninth inning at bats as well. Then dropping down to the outfield, we have Nick Castellanos, 6,300 bucks. We could also, I guess, link in Jesse Winker here as well because they're both really expensive Reds outfielders hitting next to each other, and you got the money for both of them, fantastic. If you have to pick one, I would prefer Winker just because he's been great versus right-handed pitching this season, and his numbers are off the charts. He's batting 364, 451 WOBA, 273 ISO, and a 183 WRC plus with a slugging above 630. Castellanos does have some similar numbers, but I do prefer him versus lefties, and I prefer Winker versus righties, so I'm going to give him the slight edge, but both are elite plays in my opinion. Juan Soto, 5,600 bucks going against Francoff here. Do like all the Nationals today quite a bit, and Juan Soto, I mean, one of the best players in baseball, and if you are stacking the Nationals, it's really hard to leave Soto off your lineup, so I do like him quite a bit. Kyler Naquin, 4,900 bucks. Kind of a similar play to Winker. I guess we can call him the great value version of Jesse Winker, but that's not to discredit him. He's still had a fine season so far. He's cooled off from his hot start, but still batting 257 with a 372 WOBA and a 277 ISO, so I think he's certainly viable below 5K in Coors Field. Andrew McCutchen, 4,200 bucks. If you're stacking the Phillies, he's leading off, so I would have a hard time leaving him off. I know he's not hitting for a high average this season, 230 batting average and only a 335 WOBA with a 164 ISO, but again, we're in that hitter's paradise in Florida, and Anthony Kay is not a pitcher I'd be scared of, so I do like McCutchen. Michael Brantley, $4,000. I know we haven't talked about any Astros, but you can still use Altuve, Alvarez, Alex Bregman. These guys are all viable. They went off last night. Not saying that's going to happen again, but Dane Dunning's a guy that I don't think is awful, but we can still pick on Texas pitching for the most part. Michael Brantley only $4,000 for a guy that's as consistent as he is. I think that's a really, really good price point. Kyle Schwarber, $3,600 should be betting cleanup here versus a righty, and I like all the Nationals today for the most part. He's always had some good power versus right-handed pitching, so I do like Schwarbs here. Jordan Luplow, $3,400. The guy crushes lefties so far this season versus left-handed pitching. So far this season, he does have a 244 ISO. The batting average is low, but he does walk a lot. 22.6% walk rate to lefties and a 66.75 ball rate with that pretty high ISO as well, despite the low batting average. I do think there's some home run upside versus Justin Sheffield here for Jordan Luplow at $3,400. Then Jared Kelenic, he hit his first home run last night, and he only has 8 plate appearances so far this season, but he is batting .375 with a .574 WOBA and a 625 ISO, but he just continues to be free on DraftKings, so we know there's a lot of upside for him. So I know Tristan McKenzie should be a pretty popular play tonight, but even if you want to use him versus Tristan McKenzie, if you do roster him at only $2,000, it definitely opens up your lineup a little bit. So I can imagine him being really, really popular once again, because Tristan McKenzie is not like some pitcher that's going to completely mow down and neutralize this lineup. So I think you could definitely look at Jared Kelenic again at only $2,000 at the bare minimum to open up some salary in your lineup. But with that being said, guys, I think that's going to be it for the video. So I hope it was helpful. And if it was, make sure you leave a like. If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. It really helps me out. I really do appreciate it. You can follow me over on social media. I'm at Pennell16 on Twitter and cpen16 over on IG. And if you do want to help support the channel over on Patreon, link is down below for that. Projections, optimizer, ownership projections, rankings, cheat sheets, data sheets, Discord community, all that fun stuff. I do update this throughout the day. So that being said, I'm going to get out of here. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I'll see you guys in the next video.